Welcome to Iaomai, Scotland Heart to Heart. I want to start today by reading from Matthew chapter 8, verses 24 to 26. When he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being covered with waves. But Jesus himself was asleep on a cushion. And they came to him and woke him, saying, "Save us, Lord, we are perishing." And he said to them, "Why are you afraid, you men of little faith?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and it became perfectly calm. The disciples with Jesus were hardened fishermen, working men who knew the water that they were crossing and sailing on, just like many of us know the road to work better than the back of our hand. They knew every type of weather that would come up on that sea. They knew the dead calm, they knew the smooth and mirrored surface, they knew what it was like to sail on choppy waters, breezes, squalls, and even with high winds. They were experienced with light rain, heavy rain, and torrential rain. None of the different weather fronts would have faced them, because they had been fishermen, men and boy. They were well trained and experienced sailors. They were actually the type of reliable men that you would want if you were in a boat in a storm. You can just picture them as the storm starts. They're probably thinking a bit of rain was quite welcome in the hot climate that they lived in. And then the rain starts to gradually get heavier, the wind starts blowing, and now they're looking with an expert eye, taking stock and planning how to handle this. Maybe at this point, like many of us, when we face storms in our life, they're not too worried. They're relying on their own strength and their own experience and ability, possibly feeling quite confident to cope. However, as the storm worsens, maybe they start to hunker down, look for safe places to ride out the bad weather, sit in the middle of the boat, start to secure any loose ropes or loose items in the boat, securing the sail and ensuring that someone is steering the rudder. When the rain moves from heavy to torrential and thunder rolls and the sky is black and overcast and lit only by flashes of hot lightning, and now possibly not even being able to hear each other over the roar of the wind, the rumbling, clapping thunder and the crashing waves. And as this intensifies, maybe they start to hang on for dear life. With fingers sore and bleeding, securing themselves down with muscles that are taut and rigid, they're soaking wet, frightened, out of their depth. In fact, I wonder if they were even terrified. And then they start looking at Jesus, seeing him sleeping like a baby on a cushion, no less. Possibly he's even enjoying the rocking motion of the boat as he sleeps. I wonder if they started to look at each other and look at Jesus. And then they try to get to him. And I wonder if, as they crawl painstakingly towards Jesus to waken him, even getting close a couple of times before being pushed back by the high waves and the severe rocking of the boat, before they eventually managed to wake him. And now they're screaming and shouting, "Lord, save us. The boat we're in is going down." And in the midst of the mayhem and panic, what does Jesus do when he wakes? He asks them a question. I mean, they're terrified. They're looking at this storm, they're looking at Jesus, and yet before he does anything, he asks them a question. And what does he say? He asks them why they're afraid and says, you men of little faith. Now, on top of their terror, I wonder if, like me, they would be thinking, has Jesus lost his marbles? Is he mad or what? Why are we afraid? Duh! Look at what's happening. The Bible doesn't record if they gave him any answer, but goes on and says, and Jesus calms the storm. And at once the sky is clear, the sun's come out, the waters settle and gently lap at the side of the boat. You can just see them getting to their feet, relief flooding through them because they didn't die, awe and wonder rising in them at what Jesus has just done. And as the quiet surrounds them, what's ringing in their ears but Jesus saying, why are you afraid, you men of little faith? Wow, how to dash cold waters over you or what? I wonder if in that instant any of them became defensive, coughing and spluttering and thinking, what, I've walked away from everything to follow you and you think I've got little faith? Be honest now. Have you ever been in that position with God and responded with that type of thought? I know I have. How could he possibly think that of me after all I've done for him? Jesus called them men of little faith because he told them that they were going to the other side. But what if Jesus led them into that exact situation because he wanted to expose their fear? He wanted them to cross into a new place of faith and authority, because on the other side, that was where they needed the faith, the trust, the knowledge of who he was as God to feed the 5,000. He wanted to teach them how to operate in kingdom authority. He wanted to activate and mobilize them to win a harvest of souls. He exposed fear because he wanted them to stand on his truth, which said, we will go to the other side, no matter the circumstances. What was their storm actually was what God used to propel them to the other side. Amazing, isn't it, how the disciples in the middle of the storm wanted to wake God up because they were frightened, and all the while God wanted to wake up the disciples and to expose their fear. He didn't say, you men of little faith, just to condemn them, but he wanted to challenge them. He wanted through the storm to expose their hearts so that he could equip the disciples for the future. He wanted to change their thought processes. And you know, God actually allows difficult situations in our life to test us, to teach us, to develop us, and to get us into the right position to fulfill our destiny. Everything comes from our perspective in life, and the way that we view God changes everything that we see. Everything comes from the goodness of God everything about him, because he is good and he is holy and he is love. When we are able to see that, when that becomes settled in our hearts, then the things that we used to question, we no longer need to question, because we see everything as defined by his goodness. The enemy wants us to become introspective, to be wrapped up in evaluating what we're doing, what's happening, how unfair it seems, how remote God feels, how abandoned we feel. It's an easy trap to fall into, because when we look inward, we're not looking outward, where faith increases. When we look inward, faith diminishes, because we become more self-reliant than God-reliant. The Lord longs for us to turn our undevoted attention towards him. It's not that the issues of life that we are dealing with aren't important. It's not that they don't matter, and it's not that they're not painful, they are. But it's learning that it is God that is dealing with them, not us. He is dealing with them, and we need to come to a place of rest and faith and not of striving. So come and sit at his feet today. See the goodness of God work out where you are right now, because God, Jesus, still calms the storm today. Bless you.